Hello, I'm Eric Snodgrass, and thank you for watching today's long-range U.S.-focused weather forecast video brought to you by Nutrien Ag Solutions. This analysis is being provided for perspective only, and any decision made based upon this presentation is the sole responsibility of the person making the decision. And finally, please remember that all long-range weather forecasting is speculative by nature. Now, I know I do usually focus almost entirely on the U.S., but at the second half of this video, we're going to be talking about China. We're going to talk about what's going on in the Russian wheat belt in Ukraine, and we'll also focus in on what's happening in Canada. So stay tuned to the end of this. Well, as we look here at our U.S. corn planting progress, again, these numbers came out on Monday. We can see that 2019 is still our record holder for the slowest planting pace here. And we're almost, I think, past this as the main story. Now it is what crop is in the ground, what are we expecting to get out of it as the season progresses, and what are the perfect conditions that we would need to help this crop achieve what it could possibly achieve. So if I take you from this particular graph here over to our corn planting and soybean planting progress maps, you can kind of pick out the states that are in the worst shape in terms of how far behind they are with the planting progress of both. And when we just look across the country, it's amazing to see this map. There are some places across the primary corn belt that are actually desperate for rain. Went in, worked over the soil, got the stuff planted, albeit 3 to 4 weeks late. Well, then after that, some places, like look in parts of the Dakotas, parts of Minnesota, Wisconsin, even sections of Illinois, Iowa, there are places that have not gotten much rain in the last 14 days. I'm also thinking about Kansas and Missouri, where if we did work that soil over, now we're dealing with problems where as it dried out so fast, there's crust. The top 3-4 inches is extremely dry, and there are places that are needing the rain. Other places, look how wet it's been in parts of northern Missouri, parts of Illinois, getting over to the eastern Corn Belt as well, especially there in the parts of Kentucky, that just need the whole thing to shut down because of how wet things have been in the last week. So this is going to be a very uneven crop this year. This is going to be a place or a time period where we're going to be seeing some people getting exactly what they want, need, and others desperate for something different. And so I think we're going to continue with the rough weather we've been having. If you just look at the operational European model on the left and the GFS on the right, we can look over the next 10 days and you see a lot of reds here. Remembering that when you get into those deeper reds, we're talking about 2+ inches of rain. So both models are kind of in agreement about what's happening right in through this corridor and through here. Although the western side of that oval that I just drew is drier in the GFS than it is in the European model. Where they disagree is right in through this area, and we will certainly talk about why that is in a few moments. But a very important thing to be seeing here is look at how wet we've got some of the Canadian prairies. I'm going to tell you something. If you're watching this and you're in those parts of Alberta, over there into Saskatchewan, even to North Dakota, I want to tell you something. We've been having a problem where the model keeps showing precipitation, and then as we approach the date, it keeps backing off in the amounts. So it is showing rain. We've seen this for the last couple of days here, but we are in some pretty serious drought conditions in northern part of North Dakota, parts of Alberta, and parts of Saskatchewan. And we're going to take a closer look at that in just a few moments here. I want to show you when we blend everything together. This is from the National Blended Model. There is strong agreement on the heavier rainfall that's coming through this area over the coming days. Again, the disagreement is here, but even blended, we see a pretty large area there that's getting at least an inch of rain over the coming days. So as we stretch this out, that's what we're going to get. Coming out west here, you can still see it is the dry season, but coming up through Washington, there, Oregon, and California, not much, if anything, is expected here. We're still way delayed in the arrival of the monsoonal flow, because sometimes it does get going in early to mid-June, but not this year, although some pretty serious heat over the coming days. You're going to see this in a few minutes right up the coast here. In fact, today's a very, very hot day forecast. I know you see this area is dry through here, but with the flow pattern that's setting up, there will be a lot of scattered showers and thunderstorms in that area moving forward, and we will be bringing more rain to a corridor right in through here that is desperate for it. Soil moisture values are low, despite even the flooding we've seen recently in that area. We still need more steady rainfall to bring up that soil moisture profile, and the same goes there for parts of Florida as well. So that's kind of our short-term look here. I want to quickly now get to the longer-term stuff. So we ask, why are we starting to see these changes? So I have day 10 out here, and I have day 14 to day 15 over here on the right. So we're looking here through about June 22nd all the way out to June 26th. And we see that the model, the European model, is pretty keen on the development of lowering the heights here, a trough feature that's going to sit somewhere here in the vicinity of Montana, North South Dakota. And as a result, you know this, that if the flow pattern is doing something like this, while this is not, I shouldn't have drawn that with such high amplitude, I'm sorry, if it looks something more like this is going to be an area along elongated region right in through here that's going to see quite a bit of active weather between the upstream trough and the downstream ridge. Now, this is not the giant high pressure center that we had seen over the southeast. It's a much different flow pattern than that. But by day 15, this is where things get interesting. You see, everything is kind of hinging on the upstream flow. So that trough you see right there, because it tends to build into a ridge that's here in the Gulf of Alaska, and then a trough that's over here out west that builds into a ridge and through this area. So you can see the trough here and the trough there. Now, if a ridge does set up such that it runs right in through here, we're going to get northwest flow across the Corn Belt. Northwest flow, also given the fact that we've got so much soil moisture, means a lot of thunderstorm activity. But this is a shift in the overall pattern. I just want you to see that there is broad troughing in this area. Why I'm pointing this out is that if we wanted June to get warm, this isn't the flow pattern to do it. This isn't a cold pattern, but it's not a warm pattern by any stretch of the imagination. When I say warm, I'm talking warmer than average. West Coast, though, you would welcome this, I think. Given the heat we've seen, we would want to see troughing back in this area. But I need to take my drawings off of here, because what I want to do next is I want to compare with you what the European model is saying to the GFS. So you ready? So this is day 10 and day 15 from the European model. This is the GFS. As I go back and forth, you can see with me some of the major modeling differences. Now, in day 10, the differences are not that obvious. It's a bit more of an amplified pattern for the GFS. So now they're saying, well, there might be a bit more ridging down here, a much deeper trough, and that's going to focus more rain to the south than the north. Okay, that's why the European was wetter on the northern edge of this. But look out here to day 15. Let me just go back again. They both have a flow pattern that does feature a trough here, but a much higher amplitude pattern moving forward. So you can see they both have a trough, but look, the European model has a much deeper, a cooler anomaly there over the west coast. And the differences here are going to be important as we try to do this longer range forecast. I think the real subtle pattern changes, actually, look up there in the Aleutian Islands. We're talking right here. See, that's where the GFS has the trough. The European model has it a little farther south and a little bit farther to the east. And that just changes where this trough is going to be. I know I'm laboring over some pretty minute differences here, but when we are trying to forecast out this very fragile season that's showing up, it's important to note these differences, okay? Temperatures, it's a bit better of a story in terms of model agreement. Yes, heat over the next 5 days. We've been talking about that for a while in this corridor. Cooler than average weather here. And you know we don't want this. We actually want the warmth to come in to get this crop going. But because both models are kind of elongating a trough feature over into this area, the day 6 through 10 forecast here is bringing some more seasonable temperatures back to the western part of the United States after just getting scorched the last couple of days and over the next few days here. So that's a change in temperatures there. But let's get long term now. Ready? As we go out in the longer range models, I'm looking here primarily at the European ensemble. I've got you all the way out to the 4th of July here, okay? We see the model, again, latest longer range updates wanting to give us split flow. So we have a bit of ridging happening here and a trough there. And that tends to put a bigger ridge that runs right up in this area. And that's climatologically consistent. The flow pattern, though, is dipping back into a broader trough that's sitting in this area. Now, what does all that mean? That tends to mean that this corridor here continues to maintain the warmth. So Oregon, Washington, parts of Montana, but then certainly Alberta and British Columbia, much warmer than average beginning of the summer here. But you notice we don't see the model picking up on any sort of a warm bias moving forward. In fact, if you look down here, because of that flow pattern, we're going to keep much of the Corn Belt on the wetter signal. Now remember, with these models, it's not just going to paint everything wet and everything dry. We're looking here at major differences from normal. And the fact that you see the wetter bias favored over the drier bias means as we go through the month of the month of June into the month of July, this isn't going to be a month where the crop is going to get the best opportunity to play catch up. And if we keep it wet, anyone that wants to be doing the normal June applications or early July applications this year for herbicides, pesticides, everything, we're going to be worried about compaction in the fields. We're going to be worrying about what it means to get into the field to do anything, because this is not a favorable pattern. Now, I'm going to be 100% honest with you. I'm very concerned that I am starting to have my own forecasting bias be towards seeing more disaster, because all I've seen for the last several weeks is disaster for most folks. So I'm struggling with this, just to let you all know that it's hard to see a whole lot of good things when the models give me this particular pattern. If we did not have an awful planting season, I would actually look at this forecast and tell you this is amazing. But we're dealing with a much different situation here. So I want you to check out this tool. This might be very helpful to some of you. The link is up there in the upper left-hand corner. This is what I did. I went out to June. I set a June 4th planting date on a 113-day corn, so that's the corn maturity group. And what you can do with this tool is you can kind of map out how you accumulate growing degree day units, and from your starting date until when you get to silking and when you get to black layer. If we assumed everything was spot on with a normal growing season, this particular crop planted in Champaign County, Illinois, so I'm right here in East Central Illinois, would be going into silking sometime around the end of July, the beginning of August. That would be the time frame. And then it would reach black layer somewhere in here, which is what you see here in this histogram. The blue lines going up here is the climatological first dates for freezing temperatures. That's 28 degrees Celsius. So, I'm sorry, excuse me, 28 degrees Fahrenheit, much different number there. And what that does, if you just kind of look here, that really gives us a value that's way down here, already past our first time period where we're kind of getting really concerned about a frost right in that area. You see those two, I think they're kind of an orangish lines. That's 2009 and 2014. And what I'm very concerned about is if we don't get into some heat, we will go through this time period where the crop may not even mature. So that's what these two lines are that you can see going all the way over here. Now that's very concerning. Again, I'm not trying to paint a disaster picture, but I'm just looking at data, and I think this is something I'm going to have to do a whole lot more research into. Okay, let's just do this before we switch into the global outlook here. Impacts if the models are perfectly correct. We already know this very slowly developing crop. It's already very uneven. This crop actually, if we do stay wet, if we just think about the way that the root structure grows, if we do get a flash drought that shows up at some point in the season, this particular crop, because it's not right now searching for water in a lot of places, may be very susceptible to a flash drought. I think disease pressure is going to continue to be high, and we're going to have very limited windows on applications. Now, what could go wrong with this forecast? We always have to do that. That's good forecasting technique. We got to watch the Mad-Julian Oscillation and El Nino. We got a very mixed signal on it, and I have to watch something called the velocity potential in the upper levels of the atmosphere. I'll explain that in a few seconds. I'm also watching very closely these ocean temperatures off the west coast. We've seen them with time expand in area. Now, if they expand such that cooler pocket of water does this by the time I get in deep into July, that's actually an indicator that late season drought and heat is in the cards. It's not there yet, but I'm watching it. Also, there's a high pressure center that typically sits here. If we see that Bermuda high shifting with time east, that is also something to be on the lookout for with time. And as always, this is always variability in the models. I got to watch out. Greenland, northern Canada, here of the Bering Sea for any sort of high latitude blocking that could throw this whole forecast off. But that's all stuff that we can only predict out in the 2-week time period. So that's why it's such a tough thing to forecast. One last thing to show you before I show you the international stuff. I went and grabbed our hottest and driest Julys and Augusts for the Corn Belt, for the primary Corn Belt. And what we have to see when this happens is I want to see in through this corridor if this particular July and August time period could get hot and dry. We're going to have to watch right over in this area for a lot of tropical thunderstorm activity. So I'm talking here a lot of convection, upward motion in the atmosphere, and the exact opposite sitting here. That's what happens. Now that is most common when I have cool water that extends here and here, which this is kind of a La Nina look, where I have some warmer water just off the west coast of South America. Now you listen carefully. We right now aren't forecasting this. In fact, if I just go back here, you see that there's cool water in through here, where we need to have warm water in through there. And we are currently setting up with a summer El Nino pattern where I think the warmth is going to be out in this corridor, not where we would want cool to be if we're going to have a drought situation setting up later. You want to know what to take out of this? Uncertainty. This is why we have such low confidence right now in our forecast for July and August, okay? But these are the things you need to be watching with me. Okay, to finish this up, I told you, I promised you I'd give you some global stuff here. We're looking at the NDVI, the Normalized Different Vegetation Index. And when you see things on this side of the color spectrum, this is no good. Now, I know some people that watch this have some struggle seeing some colors. I'm just going to tell you, this quarter right in through here, we are seeing a lot of these colors, which would indicate that from space, this crop does not look good. And we've seen drought pressure in that area already. In fact, just talked to a guy today from Saskatoon saying things are horribly dry. There's only a little bit of green surrounding that particular spot. Coming over to this, so here is the Black Sea. So this is Ukraine. Overall, because of the spring that Ukraine has had, we see a lot of the greens on this map. So we would be looking for pressures from this point forward in Ukraine. So Canada having major problems in the Canadian prairies, Ukraine not so much. It's the same thing with the Russian wheat belt. So again, here's the Black Sea just to get you oriented here. So we're seeing throughout much of this area in through here the greener colors, and it's the same thing through much of China's growing area, which again is here and here, although you do start to see some drier pockets in places which are showing up as issues with NDVI. Okay, so globally, it's moving forward. Are we seeing any stresses? Now, in the Canadian prairies, you will have probably noticed that the European model here is picking up on these wetter conditions. And this would be God-sent rain if we could get it. This would be exactly what we need. But remember, there's a saying when it comes to drought: all signs fail in the times of drought. Even though the models are picking up on these wetter conditions, we have seen in the past a failure of the models to actually produce, the atmosphere to produce what the models had forecast. So we're going to watch this carefully. Tune into Andrew Pritchard's reports this week over Canada to see what's going on there. But I'll tell you this, the ensembles are also seeing the wetter than average conditions. So that's good, but overall, this would be one of these rains that would be something we desperately need, all right? Keeping on our international flavor here, coming over first just to show you the Black Sea is again in through this area. So this is Turkey down here. Look at parts of Ukraine. So eastern Ukraine, the southern part of the Russian wheat belt is dry over the next 10 days. And even these rainfall amounts up here are generally less than 1/2 of an inch overall. Okay, so that's what's going on in parts of the Russian wheat belt, and you can see it. You can see that Ukraine in through there, and the Russian wheat belt is showing up on the drier side of things in the longer-term models. So this is something where we start watching it now to see if it progressively becomes a problem later, because it is also, due to the highly amplified pattern here, very warm in this corridor too. Finally, I want to take you over to what's going on in China, just looking over the next 10 days. We can see that this quarter and through here, which is south of Beijing, is looking to be relatively dry. The northern growing regions here, a lot of just hit or miss rain, and that's very common for that area this time of year. Very, very wet in southern parts of China, and we are slowly seeing the monsoon move north here over India. But overall, these are just areas we're going to have to watch very, very carefully in the coming days and weeks, because we know there are problems in the United States. Are these global problems going to continue to get worse, or will the weather conditions improve there? Those are all questions we're going to answer for you every week. And that's why we do these videos so frequently. With that, though, I know that was a lot to take in, but we're going to go and wrap it up right there. We at Nutrien Ag Solutions hope you look forward to all of our forecast videos that come out this week. Hope you all have a great end to your week, and we'll talk to you again soon. Thank you.